It's the authoritative message of a king. It is a proclamation for the king. You go and you herald the message of me, the king, and to the lost sheep of the house of Israel, say, the kingdom of heaven is at hand. And while you're going, you exercise these gifts that I have given you. But why? I can see here's another take-home point for us, I believe. We also, as we are teaching, as we are, we must exercise great pity. The message gets lost, sometimes in just words. There has to be some degree of pity, some degree of compassion. So, 4 categories: heal the sick, cast out demons, cleanse the lepers, raise the dead. Why? Because, Christian, you received it freely. Freely you received. For them, you received these abilities to take care of people. Now freely give. And if you want a modern example of that, has not God blessed this culture with the ability to predict even the plight of a hurricane weeks in advance? Has He not given us things that we can use in order to share and teach? Has He not given us salvation as recipients of that? Why? Because a worker is worthy of his reward. Care of you. You go about doing His will as free recipients of what He has given with the full and earnest expectation that He's going to provide. Go about it. Trust in Him and trust in His provisions. But then there's this note. There's a responsibility associated with the reception of those things. Verse 12, when you go into a household, if the household is worthy, let your peace come upon it. But if it's not worthy, let your peace return to you. Whoever will not receive you nor hear your words, when you depart from that city or house, shake off the dust. Consequences of that and how that's going to be received, sometimes we kind of shirk off into silence. That's a human response to maybe encourage them through this. He says, but when you go into this, you find out who is really worthy. And the worthiness here is a function of their reception of the word. Those who receive the opportunity will receive a pronouncement of peace. Those who of their own will reject it will receive a renunciation of that peace. The whole point of that passage is not that the apostles are going to condemn, they're just Does the peace go to the one who receives it and say, yes, I would like to know more? Or does the peace rebound to the person who says, I trust him enough to ask you? And when they reject, go on. He challenged them, and then he's going to calm them. He's going to calm them. Somebody read verse 16 and 17, please.
Behold, I send you out as sheep amidst the wolves. Therefore be wise as serpents and harmless as doves. But beware of men, for they will deliver you up to councils and serve you as their synagogues.
He's going to calm them. I would love to know the backstory. Jesus called a meeting of the 12. Say, I got a job for you all to do. Leave me. You all pair up into groups, and I want you to go everywhere. Excuse me, Lord. We've been following you. Yeah, but now it's time for me to follow you, so you guys go on. Can you imagine how they feel? Just, well, sure you would. I'm sending you out. Behold, look at this. Listen up to me. Behold, I'm sending you out as sheep of wolves. So you need to be cautious, shrewd like a serpent, but harmless, pure, and innocent like a dove. That's a really good description of Christian living, by the way. Beware of men. Beware of men. Excuse me? What kind of men? Religious men, verse 17. Governmental men, verse 18. Family men, verse 21. All men, verse 22. We have got to get out of our minds this notion that Christianity is supposed to be popular. It should be popular. Oh, if we could just work some miracles, people would listen. No, they wouldn't. Been tried, it's failed. The Lord says every single person is going to, in some form or fashion, ally themselves in opposition to the message of the kingdom that you're. And that a demon to okay, if he's not going to give them a favorable response, if you have some information I need to know, oh, we did not fear that people don't like the message. Don't respond it by that. Just accept the fact that there is an underlying message of peace that doesn't change. Because what we tend to do is we think that our degree of peace is associated with how it is received by other people. We cannot go through life thinking that way. That is a recipe for discouragement. How we get to this position of mind where we don't recognize the spiritual storms in people's lives because they're not going to listen to me. Be shrewd. Be pure. Now in the subsequent verses he gives 4 reasons. In fact, he uses the phrase basically, do not fear, do not be anxious. He uses that 4 times. Again, apostles were afraid. They were human beings just like we are. 4 reasons for them not to fear this onslaught of opposition. that was going to come from literally every circle. The first, verses 19 and 20. Beware of men, he says. They want to deliver you up to councils and in their synagogues. That's the religious folk. Verse 18, the governors and kings. That's the governmental forces. When they draw you up, verse 19, do not worry. Really? Let the police storm this building and throw you in handcuffs, and you tell me you're not worried. All right, this is a challenge. Do not worry how or what you will speak, because it's going to be given you. It's not you who speak, but your Father who speaks in you. The first key to understanding fearlessness in our service of God is the value of inspiration. Now, we don't have the blessing they did. This is a direct operation in their lives. But they were equipped with the opportunity. Whenever you're standing before the court, God's going to speak for you. He's going to tell you what to say. He's going to guide your words. And for you and I, that means we have to devote our lives to learning those words, which are in a book in your lap. Inspiration is the first. Musical interlude. If that was background or to bring you in conflict in some form or fashion, verse 22, with all, you will be hated by all. Those aren't light words. Those aren't light words. And who should be expected to receive their 32 and 33 are not the verses that teach that. Now, we can draw a lesson from it. But when he says, whoever, continue present tense, homo the same, logeo says the same thing as. Whoever says the same thing as me before men, him I will confess before my Father who is in heaven. And whoever will deny me before men, him also I will deny before the Father. The context, frankly, has nothing to do with one who's obeying the gospel. The context has everything to do with disciples who are going about the business continuously at great peril of sharing that message in the world. The confession that is in view here is the ability to withstand the hostility of men and remain true to the message. The confession that's made is the statement, Jesus is the King. And I'm going to announce that message at great peril. Understanding that if I am faithful in my confession of that fact, in my lifestyle, in my faithfulness, that on the day of judgment, when the people who reject me are receiving a fate that's much worse than Sodom and Gomorrah, God's going to look at me and Jesus Christ is going to ascend to his feet and confess my name before the Father. That's the context. Is there an application to the public confession of faith? I believe so. Is that what the verse says? No. It's not true to the context. And a text out of context is a pretext. And unfortunately, this one lends itself to that very well. But do you recognize the profitability of living this way? You got the promise that if you're faithful to the Lord, he's going to confess you before the Father. That's a powerful moment, particularly if you insert Philippians 2, 5 through 8 in this, or 10, and understand that someday every tongue is going to confess who Jesus is before God. The choice is well, it's humanity. The choice is you do that here or you do that later. But don't fear. Don't fear. God will reward the faithful. Now let's shift gears. Let's talk about Jesus' special power. Somebody please read for us. Matthew chapter 11. 28 through 30.
Come to me, all of you who labor and are heavy laden, and I will give you rest. Take my yoke upon you and learn from me, for I am gentle and lowly in heart. You will find rest for your souls. For my yoke is easy and my burden is light.
Is there anyone else in this world who can give you a job to do that is exhausting, that is tedious, that invites upon you persecution, even death, but that burden is light? It's not hard to do. Well, the answer to that is no. Jesus has very special power. And as we back up just a bit, verse 34, we begin to see this working together. How does this special power come into existence? So he talks about persecution that's going to be endured. He inserts that statement about the confessing and the value of living faithfully despite those trials. And now, he's going to remind them about some priorities. How do I live in such a way? What does that confession he was talking about, what does it look like? What is that confession? Specifically. Again, not saying there is an application, but what is the specific application? What does it mean to confess Jesus before men? It means that I have the right priority. Verse 37. I'll spare you the details. These are the first verses I ever underlined in any Bible. He who loves father or mother more than me is not worthy of me. And he who loves son or daughter more than me is not worthy of me. And he who does not take up his cross and follow after me is not worthy of me. He who finds his life will lose it, and he who loses his life for my sake will find it. Why? Because Jesus came to bring a figurative sword of division. Because the sword that divides is the nature and the opportunity of peace with Jesus. And that people will receive it and people will reject it. That causes a division. Peace on earth will never be realized because not all people will accept it. It's a worthy prayer. It's available to all. But when it happens, there is this sword of division. And he gets really specific about a man against his child earlier, and now he's talking about a man against his father, a daughter against her mother, and so on. Then he says your relationships cannot take priority over the Lord. Confessing Jesus means Jesus is first place. It's not son or daughter. It's not family heritage. It's not mother or father. Priority in my life is not spouse. Priority in my life is not child. Priority in my life is not anything but Jesus Christ. He who loves, take out the relationships and put blank. He who loves blank more than me is not worthy of me. That's the priority. Every moment of my day must be in some way focused on the idea Jesus is first right now. And that's hard. But in addition to our relationships, discipleship demonstrates that. That's this idea of taking up the cross. That's not some painful situation you're enduring. It's an abuse of the text. The text is, I am dead. I have killed myself. My will is gone. My discipleship is to follow Jesus. I have put myself to death. I've taken my cross, and I am following after Jesus, doing and thinking the things he did and thinking the way he thought. Because he who finds his life will lose it. You find it here. Oh, I've done a lot of good things here. Well, you just might lose your spiritual life and vice versa. Then he talks about productivity in ways that are kind of startling, verses 40 through 42. So we sometimes put our bar up here and we say, well, I got some things to do, and I want to be doing great things. And what Jesus says is there's great value in small things. Verse 40 through 42. He who receives you receives me, and he who receives me receives him who sent me. He who receives a prophet in the name of a prophet shall receive a prophet's reward, and he who receives a righteous man in the name of a righteous man shall receive a righteous man's reward. Whoever gives one of these little ones only a cup of cold water in the name of a disciple, assuredly I say to you, he will by no means lose his reward. I mean, you read that, it sounds like somebody took words and put them into a blender and mixed it up, doesn't it? Isn't that what it sounds like? I mean, really, receive in the name of a prophet, righteous man, name of a disciple. What's all that mean? Here's what I'm going to encourage you to learn from it. God rewards even small acts of faithfulness. Always. Now notice what he talks about. The context again is those who receive the teaching about Jesus from his apostles. He talks about the message, the one who receives a prophet in the name of the prophet, because the prophet is carrying the message, will receive the prophet's reward. He talks about the manner in which it is taught. He who receives a righteous man in the name of a righteous man, because he is righteous, will receive a righteous man's reward. And the means. He who provides the means even gives a small drink of water to the worker to enable him or her to teach that message. He's not going to lose a reward because it's the name of a disciple. Jesus addresses the message being received, the manner in which it is received, and the means by which those people are supported. And he says every single one of those is associated with a blessing. And though time won't permit it, I want to encourage you to think about how valuable that is to us. Just listening and receiving, inviting the word, and just helping people along the way. That's good for us. And that's part of what confessing Jesus is about. Appreciate your very good attention today. Thank you.